Hello, this is Adem Carroll from Burma Task Force. I'm the Burma Task Force team lead and also the UN Programs Director. It's 1 year anniversary of the Burmese military coup, a brutal, ongoing occupation characterized with bombings, torture, mass arrests, and really a destructive force throughout Burma. Hundreds of thousands of Burmese and ethnic communities have been displaced, and there is no end in sight. So we have today 3 experts in the situation in the region. Very glad to have you. Hnin, Pwint from Burma Campaign UK, Chris Sidoti from Special Advisory Council, and also formerly of the UN fact-finding mission to Burma, and also Lwin of the Free Rohingya Coalition. And I'm going to say a bit more about each because they're very distinguished in their work. And we'll be allowing some minutes for presentation and then a discussion. What is the current character of the crisis? What do we need to focus on as people who are trying to improve the situation? Who is winning? How can democracy and human rights win? I was just reading in The Diplomat an article by Philip Anawit, former advisor to Myanmar's parliament and government, just came out today, and he's talking about how important it is for the international community to engage with the national unity government, the alternative to the military junta. He points out that that there's some hope that the ethnic armies are mentoring and supporting the People's Defense Forces, that there is some cause to hope, but are we anywhere near any kind of peace in Burma? So as we discuss, I'm going to introduce the speakers in order of their appearance. Hnin Pwint has been actively involved in advocating for human rights and democracy in Burma, currently working at Burma Campaign UK as Senior Advocacy Officer. Hnin has worked with families of political prisoners to bring international attention to their cases and has conducted extensive research on Burma's repressive laws. She has addressed parliamentarians in the UK and other countries, lobbied governments all over the world, and testified at the United States Senate hearing. The daughter of Ko Mya-ai, one of the leaders of the 88 Generation Student Group in Burma, Hnin has sought to raise her father's detention and the plight of more than 2,200 other political prisoners. Her father is being detained in Sen prison in Yangon by the Burmese military, having been taken from his home in the early hours of February 1st, the first day of the coup, a year ago. Sorry about that anniversary, very painful. After she speaks, we'll be asking Chris Sidoti to speak. He is a human rights lawyer, advocate and teacher working from Sydney, Australia as an international human rights consultant. He has been a member of the United Nations Human Rights Council's independent fact-finding mission on Burma or Myanmar. Previously, from 1999 to 2013, he was principal facilitator and interlocutor in a human rights initiative between the government of Australia and the government of Myanmar. He's also been Australian Human Rights Commissioner as well as director of the International Service for Human Rights, an important NGO based in Geneva, Switzerland. And finally, we'll be welcoming Lwin, born in Butidang and raised in Rangoon, a prominent Rohingya political activist and blogger from Myanmar, from Burma. For the past 18 years, since his departure from there, He's been documenting human rights violations and military campaigns of the Tatmadaw military in Rakhine State. He's a prolific commentator on Rohingya issues on radio, television channels, and other mainstream media outlets. He co-founded the Free Rohingya Coalition with Maung Zarni. The coalition promotes boycotts, economic and diplomatic sanctions, and other solidarity actions, seeks international accountability for perpetrators of crime against humanity and genocide, and works to build a grassroots movement supporting a protected homeland. So anyway, welcome all of you. And to kick it off, I'll welcome Hnin.
Thank you very much, Adem, and thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. It's really heartbreaking to think it's been a year, one whole year since Lwin and his military staged a coup, and they have committed so many atrocities and so much human rights abuses across the country. And of course, since then, nearly 1,500 people have been killed. And this figure doesn't include people who've been killed in ethnic areas. And today, there are more than 8,780 political prisoners sitting in prison. And we still don't know many of them and where they're being detained or their condition at the moment. But, you know, despite all the violence that the military have committed and continuous arrest of political activists and civilians, I like to say that Lwin hasn't been able to consolidate power or take full control of the country, because people have been resisting in many ways possible. They have been banging pots and pans at night. They've been going on strike and refusing to pay electricity bill because the money goes to the military. And they're boycotting military businesses and also, of course, demanding international justice and international action and support. And yes, we have seen different rounds of action taken by the international community. And the latest news of the big oil companies like Total and Chevron pulling out of Burma is really encouraging. I would like to say it's a great achievement by the people of Burma, but we also know that there are so much more the international community can do and they should be doing to help people in the country. Activists, civil society organizations, and people from inside and outside the country have been demanding for 5 things from the international community. One is to stop the supply of arms and equipment to the military. We know that every weapon the military uses against our people came from abroad, based on foreign technology or made with foreign equipment. And of course, despite the fact that military has been breaking international law for decades, there is no global arms embargo on Burma. And I think around 140 countries in the world don't have arms embargo on Burma. And it is important to have a strategy in place to make sure that countries can impose arms embargo unilaterally rather than waiting for a resolution at the UN Security Council. And countries like the UK and the US and Canada should be working with like-minded states to make sure, and they encourage countries to impose arms embargo unilaterally, and they should work to build a global coalitions of countries imposing arms embargo. And 2, stop funding the military, which is very important because we know the money the military has, they won't be using these to build schools or hospitals. They are using this to oppress more people. So that's why continuing with the new round of sanctions reduces revenues to the military. And it is important because it will reduce the military capacity to operate and buy more military equipment. And it will also help undermine the crony businesses. And they are a crucial part of the economic infrastructure. And they support economic interest of the military. And they help facilitate the supply of military weapons and military equipment. And at the same time, continuing with the regular new round of sanctions, rather than one-off response to the coup, impact the military and these cronies psychologically and financially. And of course, these economic pressures should be applied together with more countries imposing arms embargo, and more countries supporting international justice mechanisms, and more support, both political and humanitarian, for people in the country. And 3 is deny legitimacy. The international community should be supporting and recognize a national unity government. And we know that there are still many problems with the national unity government, and many people are still identifying those problems. But they should be recognized as a legitimate government of the country, and they should be given support to improve themselves. And members of SAC and representative of the ministries or ministers under the control of the SAC shouldn't be allowed to attend international meetings, or shouldn't be allowed to meet with international organizations, including UN and private sector bodies. And of course, there are often talks about engaging with the military to find peace and engaging with the military to move forward. But we know that time and time again, military talks about engagement while they're killing people and arresting civilians on the ground. And we know from many experience that this military do not care about human rights or democratic values at all. And 4 is political and humanitarian support for the people in Burma. And it's very important because they should be political and humanitarian support should be given to the national unity government and civil society organizations working tirelessly on the ground. And international community should support grassroots organizations who are working tirelessly to document human rights violations on the ground. And of course, there should be an increased support for cross-border aid and informal mechanism for providing humanitarian support. And international donors and big organizations, they should recognize that the regular normal rules of reporting and auditing and report writing cannot be done in a remote and conflict area. So they should be more flexible in supporting grassroots organizations. And of course, lastly, and most importantly, is justice and accountability issue. The military should be held accountable for the crimes they have committed, not just since 1st of February last year, but since many decades. They've been committing atrocities against the ethnic minorities in my country, and they should be held accountable for that. And they should be held accountable for the genocide of the Rohingya. But sad, and it's frustrating that even countries that claim to support human rights like the UK and the US are refusing to support referring Burma to the ICC. And we should be working on this in the coming months. And yes, all these issues, and it's devastating to think that Burma is once again under another military dictatorship. But also we need to recognize that people in Burma have been sacrificing so much, but also they have been winning, because the fact that it's been a year on and Myanmar hasn't been able to consolidate power means big win and big encouragement for people in the country. And their courage and their determination is stronger than ever. And they should be supported by the international community. And we are asking help and support from international community, because we know there are so many things they can do to help people in the country, and they should be doing that rather than waiting to see whether military will change their heart or not, because they won't. So I will stop here and thank you. I will look forward to our discussion.
Thanks, Hnin. And those recommendations were very strong, and I hope policymakers listening to this will take notice. Now, the resistance of the Burmese people is truly moving and amazing, and hopefully this will continue and get support from the international community. Chris Sidoti, you have been part of the response and the support for democracy for decades now. And your work with the UN fact-finding mission has now turned into work with the Special Advisory Council, working to hold Burmese authorities accountable and to assist the forces of democracy. I wondered if you could start by speaking a bit about how your role has developed, and also what your current focus is in your work.
Thanks very much, Adam. It's nice to join the program, and thank you, Hnin, for your introductory comments there. I can only begin by endorsing everything that you've said, including your very strong recommendations at the end. Adam, to go back to your question, yes, I've been involved with Myanmar now for more than 20 years. I started off, my first contact was dealing, in fact, with the military regime at the time, in the late 90s and the early 2000s, when their hold on Myanmar was essentially a stranglehold that it was almost impossible for any people locally to challenge. Subsequently, I continued my involvement during the early transitional period, as it was known at the time, working very much with the newly established Human Rights Commission in Myanmar. Then, as you've described, I was part of the United Nations Independent International Fact-Finding Mission on Myanmar. It worked between 2017 and 2019, reporting to the UN Human Rights Council. I worked then with two others, Marzuki Darusman from Indonesia, who was the chair, and Radhika Kumaraswamy from Sri Lanka. And we produced, with our secretariat, extremely substantive reports to the Human Rights Council and to the international community generally about the situation in Myanmar. When the coup began on the 1st of February, Young-hee Lee from Korea, former special rapporteur on Myanmar, contacted me, and Marzuki Darusman from Indonesia as well, and suggested that we three former UN mandate holders work together on Myanmar during this period. And we established the Special Advisory Council for Myanmar, and we have been working, I have to say, very heavily. It's been a far more arduous task than I had expected, and longer over the last 12 months. And I think perhaps it's that last point, far more arduous and longer than I had expected, that I need to begin my comments. I have to start, Adam, with two very humbling confessions of being wrong. When I woke up on the 1st of February last year, I was staggered when I heard the news of the coup being launched overnight. There had been rumours running around for days, but I never expected it for a minute. I rejected those rumours and much of the speculation. I thought that the military was rational. There was no rational basis for this coup. They had imposed a constitution on Myanmar. They had entrenched their power, even entrenching the constitution by providing that it could not be changed without a more than 3/4 majority of the parliament, and they controlled 1/4 of the seats. So they had veto power over the constitution. They had control of 3 ministries, the core ministries of defence, border affairs and home affairs. They had veto power in the Security Council of the Myanmar cabinet. They ran a large part of the economy and were making a lot of money. They had the advantage of Aung San Suu Kyi as State Councillor and Foreign Minister, whose credibility persuaded the United States, the UK, the EU to lift sanctions on Myanmar, so that there had never been more money flowing into that country, and a large part of it flowing into the coffers of the military. I could not see any rational basis as to why the military would stage a coup. Why bother when they had it all their way anyway? It was totally irrational. The Myanmar military does not work on a logical basis like the rest of us do. There was no reason to stage the coup other than the wish for unfettered power. The personality clashes between the State Councillor, Dorsu, and the military commander-in-chief, Min Aung Hlaing. The wish to have even more of the good wicket that they were on at the time. So it was illogical, it was irrational. The military already had a substantial level of control in Myanmar, but they wanted everything. That's what it comes down to at the base. My second confession is that I thought the coup would be consolidated and the opposition would collapse within a month or two. When we established the Special Advisory Council for Myanmar, I thought this was a short-term commitment to try to provide such support for the opposition movement as we could, the democratic movement, over a short period of time before the inevitable happened. That's what had happened previously in Myanmar history. In 1988, in 2007, people had a strong longing for democracy and for freedom. And the military had squashed that longing brutally on each occasion when it was expressed. And I thought the same would happen again. I was wrong. I was absolutely wrong. A year later, the coup has not been successful. The democracy movement is thriving. The people are more united and more determined than ever. Much has changed in the last 10 years. First and foremost, a new generation has come up, a generation that has experienced contact with the outside world, that has seen the benefits of democracy, that has had a small taste of freedom, even within the constraints of the 2008 Constitution. And for them, there was no going back. We've seen over the last 10 years the Rohingya tragedy in 2016, 17, and continuing. And that certainly provides many powerful lessons for other ethnic nationalities in Myanmar. The Rohingya, that for so long had been the despised and highly repressed population in Myanmar, became a symbol, a reflection of what the military does to Myanmar's ethnic nationalities. The support for the Rohingya has shifted enormously in the last couple of years, and particularly in the last year. And other ethnic minorities now recognise that they have a common experience in dealing with this brutal military, and that they will only break away from military repression by working together. The National League for Democracy itself has changed. Dorsu, as we know, is imprisoned, detained, and not able to have contact with her colleagues. But in her absence, others in the NLD have stepped forward to take a leadership role, whereas in the past, they were not able to do so. And they have reached out to the ethnic nationalities parties and to the broad sweep of the democracy movement in Myanmar. I have never seen such unity amongst Myanmar people. Across the ethnic divisions that the military has exploited so successfully over the last 50 or 60 years, those divisions are becoming less and less relevant now, as all of the various groups of Myanmar peoples combine to oppose this common foe, this brutal military, and their attempts to impose their will upon the nation. So that's a change. And that's a very positive development that a year after the coup began, we now see being expressed through the National Unity Government. So Myanmar constantly surprises, at least it constantly surprises me. The efforts that have been made by the people over the last 12 months have been unique in Myanmar history. They express a determination that we have never seen before. We are seeing the military responding as it has always responded, with the same levels of brutality and the same tactics. One of the things that in the UN fact-finding mission we comment on when looking at the Rohingya crisis was that the military tactics against the Rohingya were certainly far more intense than had been found elsewhere and far more widespread, but essentially the tactics were the same. They were the same tactics that the military had used against ethnic nationalities for the last half century. And now we are seeing those tactics being spread even further throughout the country. But the military is stretched thin. It's struggling to respond to ethnic armies that are active in many parts of the country: Karen State, Karenni State, Kachin State, Chin State. If war resumes in Arakan State, Rakhine State, against the Arakan army, we will see a very different situation. Already, we are seeing this unity being expressed towards the Rohingya people themselves. The National Unity Government has recognised them as Rohingya, a people, has apologised for the support provided to the military in the past, and has indicated that the Rohingya are entitled to citizenship, to a place in Myanmar's future, and to justice for what has happened in the past. Other ethnic nationalities are acknowledging that. In a recent interview, even the commander of the Arakan army in the same part of Myanmar has expressed openness to the Rohingya returning as citizens of Myanmar. So we have seen fundamental shifts in the last 12 months, brought about in response to the coup. The suffering is going to continue. It's going to continue for a long time. In another interview this week, the Prime Minister in the National Unity Government talked about his hope for victory by the end of this year. He said he expected victory much sooner, but now realises that it will take time. We cannot underestimate the brutality of the military. We cannot underestimate the determination of the democratic movement in Myanmar and all the peoples of Myanmar, but we must also acknowledge that the suffering that they will continue to endure will be extreme. Our responsibility as people outside Myanmar is to support and encourage the democratic movement and the peoples of Myanmar in every possible way. And Hnin has indicated how we can do that and how we have failed to do it in the past. Maybe the third surprise, the third confession I have to make is that I have underestimated the willingness of the international community to respond. I hope I get that surprise over the next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris Sidoti, for bringing a lot of clarity to this complex situation and bringing up some signs of hope and opportunity that we should work with. As we start to speak about the Rohingya and their ordeal, their genocide, we're going to first take a really brief break for identification and promotion purposes, and we'll be right back.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour, walk a mile in my shoes, walk a mile in my shoes.
And this is Adem Carroll back with the discussion, Confronting the Tatmadaw on the anniversary of the first anniversary of the military coup. I hope the only anniversary. We have 3 speakers, and we are now up to Lwin from the Free Rohingya Coalition, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity today. I am very honored to share this panel with the Chris Sidoti and the my sister Winnie. So mostly covered by the Chris and the Winnie, and also Winnie has made the strong recommendation. I still want to add one point that this Tatmadaw, the military has been terrorizing the ethnic minority in the country for more than 60 years. Actually, we are under this military operation for 60 years now, since the 1962. This is not the first time military coup happened in Myanmar. Since 1962, this is the third time. When the coup happened in 1988, I was a young boy. I still remember the brutality of the military. It happened near my house, in front of my eyes. Hundreds of people were shot dead by the same military today, killing the civilian and the other member of the ethnic minority. And also, you all know that this Rohingya genocide has been happening since 1978. It has been more than 40 years, and that these Rohingya people are still facing all the brutality and the several restriction, like the freedom of movement, marriage restriction, restriction on the education and the healthcare system. And nowadays, when the people cannot bear, this all the restriction, when they try to flee from Myanmar to the country like Malaysia and the Thailand, they were arrested across the country and put in the prison. Most of them were sentenced to 2 to 3 years. Even underage, like under 18, were sentenced. This happened within 1 year. Those are not counted by those, counting the political prisoner in the country. So in this 1 year alone, I think more than 1,000 Rohingya women and the young people were being arrested and sentenced from 2 to 3 years. So across the country, Winning also mentioned about the 1,500 civilians were killed, even as young as 7 years old, 6 years old were being shot dead by this same military. So this all are happening because of the impunity. Since the 1962, there were the uprising like in 62, 1974, 1988, 1996, and also in 2007, thousands of people were killed. There was no accountability at all. In these 60 years, a civilian government ruled the country for 5 years, but also they were only engaging with the military, just to secure their position, and as they don't want to confront with the military, there was no accountability at all. When the Gambia filed against Myanmar for the Rohingya genocide, Aung San Suu Kyi went to the International Court of Justice and defended the military, but the military put her in prison right now. So what I want to say is, since there was no accountability against this military, the militaries keep committing the crime against humanity, genocide, and the war crime. So it's time to stop this military, and we all know that brutality of the military. So the recommendation from me is, to designate this military as the terrorist entity. That is the most suitable. Like, recently the US government targeted the rep from the Bangladesh, and also they have been targeting many other countries as well. The same should be done to the Burmese military as well, not just targeting LID 33 or 99. The entire military is, terrorizing all the soldiers, except a few soldiers, who were just recently defected, and they joined the civil disobedient movement. But all of them, they are obeying the order of the military chief, and they keep killing the people. And the same thing happened to the Rohingya, now happening across the country, burning the houses, torturing the people, and now, like, the oppressive law, like the cyber law, now they are going to control everything, even for the VPN, they are going to punish, they are going to try for 3 years or at least 1 year, and the fine is 5 million judges. And also since the coup, the social media were blocked. So this country is slowly moving like, the North Korea. This should not be happen. And when it comes to the action, the West always they focus, now happening in Ukraine. Immediately, the foreign secretary, U.S. foreign secretary went there, and they are protecting the Ukrainian people. But when we asked for to protect the civilian in Myanmar after the coup, before the coup, the Rohingya people were just dying for the R2P from the United Nations. Nobody really cared for this 850,000 Rohingya fled to Bangladesh. Now, 10,000 of people, displaced in Myanmar, and the 1,000 of people were killed, 1,000 of people were being put in the prison. I'm not saying they are not taking the action, but their action are not sufficient. Like the Hnin mentioned about the arm embargo, that is really necessary, and also the sanction against the Myanmar oil and gas gas enterprise, that is also very much important, because I think this two only can stop this military committing the atrocity, because with this money they are buying the weapon. And also another one thing is the diplomatic relation with the military. No country really take any diplomatic action, so the military is thinking that they are still recognized by the all Western country and the ASEAN country. ASEAN move is also encouraging, because they have the no interference policy, but still like Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines are supporting, and even the Singapore, they are supporting the struggle of Myanmar people democracy. This is really engaging. And another one important thing is now there are the movement of the civil disobedient movement. 10,000 of civil servants joined this movement. That is really very important to stop the administration of this military, to limit the power of the military. So what I would like to ask from the international community is to support all the movement that in Myanmar. So once we can take down this military dictatorship, then the Rohingya problem also will be solved. Chris also mentioned about the change in Myanmar, because before the coup we were completely friendless. Nobody accept the Rohingya. But after the coup, we have built the solidarity movement. Now even the NUG government, at least they recognize the name Rohingya, but still there are a lot of things to do to recognize the Rohingya as the official ethnic group, like that happened in during the parliament democracy period from 1948 to 1962, and also that the citizenship status, like entitled to citizenship, is not the right solution. The Rohingya should have the bona fide citizenship right, But I still have the positive toward this the people in Myanmar. They will really change, because they are now realizing that the same military have committed the grave of crime, genocide against the Rohingya. Before that, they thought this didn't happen, but the same thing is not happening. So I will stop here. I think I took the time more than 8 minutes, so I will try to answer the question with my co-panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nissan Lwin, and that gives us a sense of the challenges as well as the opportunities. We're going to have one more brief break, and then we'll be having a discussion about some of these challenges and opportunities, as well as some things that may need more focus. So please stay tuned. Hi, this is Adem Carroll. We're talking about the first anniversary of the Burmese military coup and what we can do about it. Our expert panelists have been speaking, and we're up to the exchange and some Q&A. First, I did want to take the privilege of the moderator and ask a bit about the ASEAN 5-point plan. What do you think of it, and what are the alternatives? Maybe Chris, if you don't mind jumping in first, and then anyone else who wants to respond.
Thanks, Adam. The ASEAN 5-point consensus, as they call it, was adopted last April. It's an important document. It's an important plan. It certainly doesn't go anywhere near far enough, but at least it's a starting point. And it was recognised as such by the National Unity Government very shortly after it was established. So there's certainly willingness on the part of the democratic movement to engage with ASEAN and to engage with its 5-point consensus. The problem, as always, has been with the military. The military has played games with ASEAN, and the Commander-in-Chief, Min Aung Hlaing, has played games with the incoming chair of ASEAN, the Prime Minister of Cambodia, Hun Sen. Excuse me. He's treated Hun Sen very disrespectfully when Hun Sen reached out to him, and he threatens to undermine Hun Sen's authority in ASEAN. So the consensus is a starting point, but the military needs to take it seriously before anybody can see it moving forward.
A tweet from the government. It was interesting to read a tweet from the government of Cambodia that they kind of recognize that there are two governments, and so we look forward to hearing of some kind of engagement with the National Unity Government as well as the military. Regarding ASEAN or any other peace plan, then there's the whole other aspect of the profit motive. The Tatmadaw have always run enormous conglomerates and profited from land grabs and various businesses, not only arms sales, but other businesses as well, illicit and licit. And so I know that was included when it was very important to see it included in the fact-finding mission report that you helped draft a few years ago. And so I did want to give you the opportunity of just making comment on the economic profit motive and what role that plays.
The economic side continues to be extremely important. Here too, Myanmar has changed over the last 10 to 20 years, and the military no longer dominates the economy as it used to, but it's still a major economic actor, and its conglomerates, its very big holding companies, Myanmar Economic Holdings and Myanmar Economic Corporation, continue to be major economic actors. And of course, since launching the coup, the military has also sought to take control of the tax base, rents and interests and dividends paid by other companies operating in Myanmar. So one of the things that we at the Special Advisory Council have seen as very important is cutting off the cash flow to the military, depriving them of their source of funds. And that remains a very, very high priority. The announcement by Total and Chevron are important announcements in relation to the oil and gas sector. Important announcements that have been a damn long time coming. But we have seen a great deal of movement by business. In many respects, I think we've seen more responsibility on the part of business than we have on the part of many governments and the United Nations itself. We need to encourage that, to cut off the cash flow so that the military feels the pressure, the economic pressure of its actions.
Thank you, Chris. And I know you have to run in just a moment. I'll ask Hnin if you would like to jump in here and comment.
I think the economic interest is huge. So that's why, when we are talking about targeting military companies and when we are talking about targeting military or cronies, because it's very important. And, you know, my country is a very rich country with a lot of natural resources, but look at the situation on the ground in terms of health and education. Military hasn't provided anything. So the more money they get, the more that they will use on buying more weapons. And that's why imposing arms embargo is important. And I go back to the point of around 140 countries in the world don't have arms embargo. So it's important, of course, for keep working on different rounds of economic sanctions on military companies and military businesses. But at the same time, we need to identify which country is supplying arms to the military. And it's not only just weapons we are talking about, not guns. We are talking about the technology that is used to track people or other spywares situation as well. So we need to identify those countries and make sure that they impose arms embargoes on Burma. So that has to happen together with economic sanctions and arms embargo. So that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, thanks, Hnin. And I wanted to invite Sharifa Shakira, my colleague at Burma Task Force, to ask a question of Nason Lwin. We'll continue just for 5 more minutes, I think. Sister Sharifa, please.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Sharifa. I am a Rohingya refugee as well. So again, thank you so much for all your inputs to all the speakers. So my first question will be with the military in power. With the military in power, is there any hope for Rohingya to return home with citizenship? And what is the relationship between the Arakan army and military?
Yeah, do you want me to answer, Sharifa? Well, under this military regime, I think repatriation is impossible because the military has been denying our citizenship and also our identity and also our existence. The May Online has said this unfinished business. He told this in 2017. So he has the intent to wipe up the entire population from the Arakan state. That is why the last wave of genocide series taken place. That is the reason 850,000 Rohingya had to flee to Bangladesh in 2016 and the 2017. So, and after the coup, just to get the recognition by the international community and also just to give the hope to the international community that he is going to bring back the Rohingya. He sent a letter to the Bangladesh embassy in Rangoon. Since then, no contact with the Bangladesh official at all. I have been following with the diplomat at the Bangladeshi foreign ministry. Until now, no contact at all. So he has no intention to bring back the Rohingya refugee. So in regard to the relationship between Arakan army and the military, they have the temporary ceasefire. But since the Arakan army is extending, their military presence inside the Arakan state, and now at least they are, they became like the government administrative body in at least in 9 townships, and they have their own judiciary system, taxing system. So they are like the small government there. So I think, and also the Arakan army is talking about the greater autonomy and possibly the independence. So I think in a few months, maybe there will be a clash again between the military and the Arakan army, because the military, they don't even accept the federal. So confederation and the independence is impossible. So there will be a clash. And so we are like, now the situation for the Rohingya is like, we have the state actor military, non-state health actor like Arakan Army, and also in some places like in the border area, there is the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army. So that the ARSA present is very small, but since, as I mentioned, Arakan Army is like a government, and some places, there is the peace between the Rohingya and the Rakhine Buddhists, but in many places the people are suffering, same as the military, but we are not talking much for the sake of the peace between the two community. But now there are some independent, the investigation going on. We have also the IIM. There are the people reporting. So one day we will see a big report what they are really doing. And also before the coup, there were engagement between the Rohingya activists and the Rakhine activists. We had the joint declaration, but after the coup, most of the things were changed. And nowadays we are reading the interview with the Arakan Army chief. He started denying the Rohingya identity, which is the basic fact of the genocide. Denying your identity means you are targeted. So he said he respect the human right and the citizenship of the Rohingya, but at the same time he is denying the Rohingya identity. That means he is simply he's not respecting the self-identifying right.
I guess we have time for maybe one more question. Sharifa, would you like to ask maybe Hnin?
Yes, sister, I would like to ask you, with the coup in Myanmar, is there any particular way that women been, particularly affected in Myanmar? And is there any, are the women groups able to assist them?
Thank you, sister. It's a really great question. We have seen that, since the coup started, since the protest started, we have seen the women taking the forefront of protest and demonstrations and many other resistance movement. And it's really encouraging to see that. But at the same time, unfortunately, as a misogynist Tatmadaw and the military, when women get arrested for protesting or supporting the resistance movement, they get harsher treatment in detention center and in prison. There are numerous reports about rape, sexual assault, and other sort of humiliation and harassment towards women detainees. So it's really worrying to see that. Of course, we only know a handful of cases, but we don't know how widespread it is, especially and particularly in ethnic areas. And like Lwin said, there are around or more than 1,000 Rohingya prisoners. So we don't know their condition, and we don't know how they are in prison and how they are being treated. So it's really worrying for us. But I like to keep on the encouragement side of it, is that there are many women organizations working on the ground, grassroots women organizations working on the ground and working at Thai-Burma border. They are working tirelessly to document these human rights violations, particularly against women. And they're working tirelessly to empower women's movement and help in any ways that they can. And that's why when I said about international community supporting these grassroots organizations is very important, so that they can continue working and documenting human rights violations, yes, but also they can continue support women leaders and activists on the ground. So I hope it answered the question. Thank you.
This has really been a very rich discussion, and I really hope that people will take to heart the many suggestions made, your perspectives, and want to help, want to get involved. One way they can do it, they can go to the Burma Task Force website, and then I am delighted to pass them on to any of our participating organizations, to any of you, if people want to find out what they can do to help. We also have our own action alerts every week. We try to reach out, support the Burma Act in U.S. Congress, and other funding issues for humanitarian needs of displaced people. But really, the political struggle is central here, and how we can ensure that the international community supports the forces of democracy, and this is both short and long-term struggle, very important. And we wish the people of Burma, all the diverse communities, Rohingya, Karen, Kachin, Chin, all of them, the Burman, the best in the struggle ahead. So we have to end now, but thank you all very much, and perhaps we'll meet again.
Yeah, thank you too.
Thank you very much.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Take care.